Okay, it's the beginning of May. That means it's time to start talking about the hummingbirds. They are starting to arrive. I find that now is the best time to try to get their attention. Let's talk about it. Okay, since it's early May, we're trying to think about how do I get their attention? What do I need to feed them? How do I get them to come to my area? And do I really need to pay attention to what kind of feeders I'm using? And the answer is yes, yes, and yes. Everything matters. First of all, hummingbirds are attracted to flowers. They very generic. They have their favorites. Typically, it's some kind of flower that has a long tubular neck on it. But I do find that not everyone works. Some produce more nectar than others. Some are just more attractive to hummingbirds than not. So you really have to do your homework and trial and error. When I started getting into hummingbirds, I was selling plants for 20 years and had never really targeted hummingbirds. Once I've been on this mission of trying to find out what they really work, I found out how many things online there are that list the same plants. And I find they're very generic. It'll say a lantana. Well, there's a big difference. There's hundreds of varieties of lantana, and some are more effective than others. So I've nailed it down to my favorites as far as the plants, which is my go-to. And I'm going to show you the first one is right behind me. And I owe this one to Proven Winners. They really got it right on this. So these are Rockin' Fuchsia. Rockin' is just a series of salvia. So this one plant, Rockin' Fuchsia, I find is just a hummingbird magnet. This flower is perfect. You can see it's got long tubular stems, but apparently there's a whole lot of nectar or smell or something that attracts them to this, because this plant, not only is it bulletproof, it was a very low maintenance plant. Every time this flower stalk will die, I pinch the plant, it makes 2 more branches, and it just keeps producing these flowers all summer long. Last year, previously I've had problems even getting the hummingbirds to hit my traditional feeders because they just kept going to these plants. Now they've expanded the line to Rockin' Purple, and there's Rockin' Blue Sage Shoes. I found their growth habit is slightly different. Their colors are slightly different. Hummingbirds go to all of them, but they still seem to hit my Rockin' Fuchsia the best. So this gets my thumbs up for the single-handed best hummingbird plant I've ever used. And what's beauty of it is it's an annual, so it's going to give you constant color. That's why if you're not on our Facebook page this week, we were actually giving one away. And the reason I like these is right now it's May. So when you look around, there's not a whole lot of plants blooming. A lot of your perennials are just starting to emerge from the ground. There are native flowers blooming. But when you look around the yard, and if I was a hummingbird that needs to eat every 10 minutes and just flew all the way up from Mexico, I'm going to be hungry. And I'm going to be scouting where the plants are that get my attention. So even though my Rockin' Fuchsia isn't the happiest being outside right now, I typically take one of the gallons, make up some planters, and throw them outside right now. And it's okay in my mind that if the plant's not overly happy, because I find that many times when I do this at the late April, beginning of May, sometimes I have hummingbirds hitting them the first day, just because there's less competition. The hummingbirds, if they're flying through the yard, they're going to find that plant. So now's the time to get your feeders out if you haven't already, and now's the time to get the plants out. I'm going to show you one more plant that I find is my number 2. This is called Vermillion. Another Proven Winner plant. I find that they're just bulletproof. I don't need pesticides. I don't need anything. The plant looks good all season. It gets these cool little flowers. We're experimenting with this planter. This is a brand new. I've got some recommendations for all the amazing hummingbird attractant plants. This is a salvia. I don't even remember the name of it right now. We made up 4 or 5 planters here for the retail to get some feedback on how well they work. So if somebody wants a planter that's designed for hummingbirds, this is going to be a good one. This plant will just keep getting bigger all season long. There's only 5. It's just an experiment. So if you get them, don't waste your time. If you see this video, there's only a few. But this is probably my number 2 plant. And we do have this in 4-inch pots. They do great in planters all the ground. Very drought tolerant also. Okay, so those are my 2 favorite plants. Doesn't matter where you put them. The more you put, the more you're going to get their attention. There are a laundry list of plants online that you can look at that are shrubs that they like, flowers going through. But the difference with perennials is they typically come into bloom every 2-3 weeks. Or rather, I should say, most perennials only bloom for 2 or 3 weeks. So perennials may be the best and really what they're targeting because they're used to those. So it's good to have some of those, but you need to plant a succession of flowers all season long. Whereas annuals, you can put them in there And maybe you just do planters, maybe you just do pockets around a yard, but the annuals are going to give you constant color. So those are my two favorites, and they're going to bloom all season long. But now I want to show you the planters. I mean, if you're going to do feeders, there are a couple traits that I have found that work a little bit better at maintenance. So these are two plant feeders that work along the same lines. The only difference is this one is all plastic, so it's less expensive. This one is all glass, so it's a little bit more robust. But it represents that most feeders come in either a red glass or plastic or clear. The mindset is they're all historically red. Hummingbirds are attracted to red flowers, so the whole premise has always been most hummingbird feeders are some version of red. My old school thought process, I would fill these with a red nectar if I was dealing with a clear glass, or if I had a red container, I would use the clear. So that's a couple of things that going through. Makes and models, aesthetics, functionability. The only two functional traits I find that differentiate hummingbirds feeders is a lot of the perches right here, the hummingbird's going to stick its neck down there. So some of these that have a slightly extended neck will stop these from getting in there. And then the second trait is this little tray here. Most hummingbird feeders will have a hook and they have some kind of little trough in here. What's key is to fill this with water. What this does is stop ants from getting down there. Lots of critters love sweet nectar inside their feeders. So by filling this with water, it stops the ants from coming down and drinking up all your solution and also contaminating the water. So that's the two traits that I find that I'm looking for in any feeder. I find they don't necessarily eat while perched. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but most feeders have a little perch. I find it more important that you have the extension and have the top there for the molt. Now the last thing is to talk about nectar. A lot of people will make their own nectar, and what the key is with the hummingbirds is you can't set it and forget it. They need fresh nutrients inside those things. So there's lots of formulas out there for making your own nectar. The problem is they don't have a good shelf life and they don't sit around. And you have to physically mix them, and then it's just a little bit more labored. So lots of manufacturers have been coming out with ready to use little packets that have preservatives in them. But I want to show you this new company. There's a big controversy in the hummingbird world as to whether making your own nectar is best or using a prefabricated nectar is bad for them because it has color dyes in it. Well, this new company that I found has been awesome, and they kind of took the best of all worlds and put it together in one easy to use package. So if you're not into mixing your own solutions, this is a great alternative. Okay, so here is the product that I was just mentioning. These products here, the beauty of these is not only they come in really cool packaging, but it's another made in America company. It's not just a solution, it's dye free, it's got a cool little dispenser, and it's made, not only is it just sugar, but it's got electrolytes in there, natural preservatives, so it's going to have a longer shelf life. What can be really dangerous to hummingbirds is if you leave the solution in the feeders in the hot sun for too long, they can turn around and it can start to ferment and they can actually get sick. So this has a natural preservative in it, but not only is it just sugar water, but it's also actually infused with nutrients from the actual hummingbird attracting flowers. So for something that's nice and easy, this comes in a concentrate, actually comes in a nice cool bottle. Some people like the glass, so again, for further preservatives and not having contaminations. The packaging is even environmentally friendly, made, I believe it was recycled material. So this company, to me, really knocked it out of the park because they have a superior product that's easy to dispense, and it comes in this concentrate. So I believe it's like 1 part of this solution to 2 parts water. And it's got a nice, easy, handy dispenser. And then it also even comes in a ready to use. So if you don't even want to deal with mixing it and diluting it in water, they come in both versions inside a product that's ready to go. So again, I try not to plug specific products in these videos. I really try to focus on just more educational. But when it comes to hummingbirds, what you use really does matter. And this product, I feel, for those of you who are looking for the ease of being able to just dispense and mix your own solution and have it last longer, and not have to worry so much about contaminating the hummingbirds if you leave the solution in too long, that's a great product. And it's actually even more nutritious for them than just mixing your own solutions. And then focusing on plant material is by far the number one. I take the mindset is I'm loading up on these planters out of my porch where I can get up nice and close and personal with the hummingbirds, and that draws them in close. And then I actually use my feeder as secondary. It just seems to work for me. But you got to do what works for you. But I feel so bad when I hear people go and buy these hummingbird feeders and then they put it up on their porch and they're disciplined, but they have no attention. There's nothing drawing those attention to the hummingbirds. So if you get that stuff out there now, while less plants are blooming, you can have a higher rate of success. And then also when those females stop migrating up here, if they pull up to your yard and see lots of hummingbird attracting plants, there's a water source, there's all sorts of different things going on that they really want, more likely they're going to take up residency in your yard or in your neighbor's yard, because they do have an amazing mind. They many times will come back to the same yard every year, and they've memorized where all the flowers were last year. So not only do they migrate up from Mexico, but they map everything and they know exactly where they're going. So when you get this spring migration, to me, is the best time to try to get the attention, because maybe there was some that were flying through your yard that were actually going to go into Massachusetts or up to Nova Scotia for even. If you get their attention with all these things in your yard, maybe they'll stop and take up residency there. Who knows? Just a thought, but it works for me. I hope it works for you, and please let us know if you have any other questions. Take care.